Hi everyone, it's me, Rajika again. I'm back with another video. I just want to talk a little bit about the weapons of colonization and how they differed between the geoclonic invasion of that psyche and the external devastation that was happening within the other clans on the medicine wheel. So the major difference about the geoclonic invasion is that it was an internal. They erased the internal identity of the geoclonic tribes within what could be categorized as the white race. So essentially, they took on the skin of, and when I say they, I'm talking about church and state, the colonizers. So they took on the color of our skin, the white skin. They reduced the internal identification of the geoclonic tribes to a very flat, capitalistic, imperialistic self-identity, so that when we looked into a mirror, that was all we really saw, was that we were descendant from this colonized way of living. However, it essentially just severed us from the knowledge that our ancestors are still holding for us, waiting for us to reclaim. So as I mentioned, like the conditions, the horrific conditions of colonization that was imposed on other clans and other tribal peoples, specifically, I can speak to Canada as I was born in Canada. I really didn't become aware of colonization and what it had done to our First Nations people till I was in my mid-20s. And that was the first time I ever heard about a residential school. So ironically, I had been incarcerated as a juvenile from 13 to 17 because I refused to go to school. So I highly identified with being imprisoned because I did not want to be assimilated into the education system. I just, it's funny in retrospect, even way back then, I knew it was propaganda and I knew that it was hurtful to me spiritually. And so I resisted. But I ended up going to jail for that. So when I heard about the residential schools, I recognized that it was like this education system being imposed on a different culture. However, I really am still wrapping my brain around the fact that the education system that I escaped from or protected myself from was really a product of colonization of my own tribe. Anyways, that to say, I do believe that even though our history books, the written ones, the ones that were written by the winners, they will tell you that, the Americas was colonized. And however, the data shows something different. The fact that these ancient people that have been on these, ancestral lands for millennia and are still here, still practicing their same traditions, and yet they've changed over the years. That's possible because they had unburnable libraries. So what colonization started with was the complete destruction of any of the oral history that would have kept us connected to what had come before us. And they wrote down new stories. And the Bible is an incredible document that really shows how powerful it is to write something down if you want it to be repeated exactly, word for word. And that's what the Bible actually does. Where oral history, it has a different standard, and um, it allows for a culture over many, many millennia to share information and modernize it with the telling for the parable or the lesson or whatever the story is being told for. Anyways, so another thing that I really want to talk about is how justice, our idea of justice, is not really based in reality. So I will hear over and over that, you know, a stable society, a healthy society, is under rule of law. But again, I counter that, and I think that rule of law is really, you know, it's the inside job I'm talking about. So we like to think that law protects rights, but it really just reinforces the idea that something externally is the one that dictates what your rights are. So because at least here in Canada, the First Nations never really assimilated that message. They, you know, stayed true to natural law. They stayed true to their tribal laws, and they supersede all of the commercial laws that we are used against us in this society. Anyways, I didn't come to all of these ideas overnight. I am definitely, it's a work in progress. I don't have answers, but I've been looking for community to have these conversations with. So, you know, I started about 26 years ago is when I bought the land that you're seeing behind me here, and we've homesteaded it for, you know, almost 25 years, 26 years now. What this land has taught me is really where I get my jurisdiction from. I believe that it is a living being and that I'm in communication with it. And as such, 25 years ago, she called to me in my sleep. I dreamt about her. I located her online, and it took me almost a year to get the courage to come. But then I bought it the day that I came here. I actually didn't even have my feet on the ground, and I knew it was the right place. But anyways, I'm going to share with you how I have decolonized myself, my identity, and how I am able to sit in the power of my matriarch, and to remember my purpose, and that all came from this land. So stick with me. I'm going to talk to you about it. I'm going to show you around a little bit. And we are going to show you that decolonization of the geoclanic tribes are not going to happen overnight. They start with one foot in front of the other, and that is what we've done here. And I'm hoping that in sharing that with you, you'll find the strength and the calling within yourself to decolonize exactly where you are, because you don't need a piece of land to do it. You need to start with the internal parasite.